Alright, so here's a quick tutorial on how we're going to get our track, it's just a basic 2D track, to work. Here I have a backdrop node right here saying that the tracking outcome is what we're kind of going for, and that's going to be based off of just translations. So translations are what we're going to focus on. You guys are going to see that we have the tracker1 marker here, and node, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. And when I play this, we got to remind people not to let their dogs poop on the sidewalk. Oh yeah. And this is going to be a continuous track, which is something that is a little more easily done in something that is made for tracking. Nuke has some pretty good stuff here, and we also have PF track and all that good stuff. So let's get started on this part of it, and we're just going to be working in Nuke. So NukeX, I should say. Let's get this to the beginning here. So I have my footage. This is just a .mov that I brought in, and then a PNG. So I will select the read to node, which is my MOV, and I will hit 1 on my keyboard. 1 is going to attach it to the viewer 1, and we can get cracking. So first off, we need to track the footage. So being at the beginning here, again, you guys just want to analyze your footage real quickly, kind of see what's going on in there, decide where you're going to want to start, look for tracking points to where you're going to have good tracking data. And we're really going for the tracking pattern box. So I'm going to bring that tracking node in and we'll start tracking from there. It's over here on the side, right? And I'll come down here. Under the transform tool, we have tracker at the very bottom. So I'll click that. We get a tracker2 node. Very good. To ease all this up, just like in class, we're going to go ahead and select this, hit 1, and that's only going to allow one property at a time. Okay. So I have the tracker2 node loaded. Always check up here to make sure that you're going to make changes to the proper node. And I'm going to click add track right here. So I have a 1-point track. A 1-point track is going to be for translations. If I was doing 2 points, I can do translations, rotations, and scale. But I would have to activate those, okay? So here's my tracking 1. And sometimes you need to kind of zoom in on this. If I click here, it thinks that I want to change the size of the pattern box, but I could just do that to make it larger so I can click and drag this anchor point and decide where I'm going to place it. Okay, so we're talking about depth here, and as far away from the camera as a certain thing is going to be placed, like the sign for instance, we can try to track that. Now there might be a foot or so between these vines and the wall, maybe a couple of feet, so you want to be a little bit careful about that so you don't have a shifting track. I'm gonna try to select something within here. I could try to see if the patterns off of these corners would be a little bit better, so maybe I'll try that this time around. I'll take this and I'll go up, and this gentleman with this suitcase here is going to kind of start passing over the markers. So as he walks through, he's going to cut off the track, or I should say it's going to occlude, and we're going to have to jump track. Okay, so we'll jump to another section and continue tracking. So first off, I'm just going to choose a pattern, and I'm assuming that something like this would be pretty easy to do. And I could either go on the inside of this, the outside, or I could start on this section right here. Okay, let me just try to do that. In this little box here, I can click and drag this to be a little bit more precise. And then I can take the pattern box, and I'll just click this. Hold down Control if I want to be able to move this independently, like the sides or the corners. So if I click and drag this corner, it's going to move it as a whole. See that? Up, down, left, and right. If I hold Control, I can click and drag one side, and I can bring that in. You guys see the pattern that I'm starting to get here. I'll hold down Control and go to the other side and do the same thing, and now I am just focusing in. So the Control key will allow for that, and I may need to add that part into the pattern to where this corner is the main pattern, and then outside here I can drag this a bit larger, and I can still do the control thing, so I can hold down Control and drag this side a little bit further. And this is going to be my search box where it's searching for incoming pixels and anything that's going to be changing before it hits in here, which is the pattern box. Okay, So we talked about all of this in class, and it's pretty good, pretty simple. And all of this is set up for the most part. Again, I'm just going to double check down here to make sure that I am on frame 1. And you guys can see that I am 24 based. That's what the film was shot at. And I shall go to the top here, and this area here is my tracking section. So I'm going to take these, and I can step forward to test this. One frame, I could step backwards. So if I chose to jump into the middle of this, or even over here somewhere on my timeline, then I can go backwards. So I can track backwards just as easily as tracking forward. But I would analyze my footage first, okay? So if you were to scrub through the footage at the beginning, like we were talking about in class, decide where you want to start, decide what you're going to track, and then I can step forward like this by clicking this icon. And I'm going frame by frame, and it's looking pretty good in here. You're going to look inside of this box to see if anything shifts. Here is another section that my tracking 1 marker is based off of the first frame. Okay, when we do a jump track, we're going to see that whatever frame that we jump on is going to start the track at that frame, and I'll be able to click on it and it will take me to that in the timeline. So I will just go forward step by step, frame by frame. Okay. And here comes our businessman, almost cutting off our marker here. And you guys will see that if I keep going, it's still picking it up pretty well, even though his face is already inside of the search area. But watch when I step forward and forward. Okay, the tracking marker just slid at that point. So I can come back down here, and I'll step backward 1 frame by clicking this. Okay. And everything was fine up to that point. So now I'm going to do a jump track. And I can go based off of all of these rows, if you will, because they're all at the same level. If I come over here, I risk a little bit of shifting if I go too high up, which this wall is pretty much the same level as these grates, right, that the vines are climbing. Then I probably won't have to worry about any shifting or sliding in the track. So I can find another corner, like this one's pretty visible. I'll hold down Control now. Holding down Control and clicking on this anchor point in the center here and dragging, and that's okay if I change the little pattern box a little bit. It's just that Nuke doesn't know that I'm trying to click on the actual tracking anchor, which is that little crosshair in the middle. Once I pull it that way and then I come back to the anchor, it should know that I want to move it. And you guys see this little yellow line that indicates that I am doing a jump track. Okay, and a jump track is really just a continuous track. It just shows that I'm going to jump to another point, and the data will continue to go based off of where this line, these are all keyframes right here, it's going to be based off of that, and it's going to continue those keyframes from my original point. All right, so my object will not jump to this point and then follow and then jump to the next point and follow. So I'll just kind of place this up here, kind of like so, and I'll just kind of put it in the corner like that, and I'll just take this little box here. If I make these too large, because I really could go like this and say, hey, pay attention to all of this, it's going to really cut down my computing power. It's going to be very processor intensive. Okay, so I'm going to cut this down to something like this. I'll hold down Control. I'll drag this one in, and I'll drag this one out. A little bit like that. That should be fine. I'll try it out. My search area is maybe a little large for this. You can play with different search areas if that's what you would like, to search a little bit more broad. Sometimes you might get good results, but sometimes you might get really bad results. So you might want to stay really tight with it. So I could stay really tight with it. Maybe keep this guy in the loop right there. So I can hold down Control and drag this in, and then drag this one out a little bit. And now I have this corner as a search part that might also be kind of like another pattern for Nuke to find. And I'll just kind of test it by stepping forward. Okay, now this is pretty good. If I were to hit this icon here, it's going to track to the end of the footage. Sometimes Nuke will stop and say, hey, I've jumped off. So I'll hit play and it'll track, and then it's jumped off. I'll have to hit stop there because I noticed that. I was paying attention in here. So let me just scrub back a little bit to where it jumps off. All right, and that should be around here. There we go. So if I go frame by frame here, down here at the bottom, it's just going to play it frame by frame. This is just my play mode. and this is my actual tracker. So I can step forward and say, okay, right here it's borderline moving, so I'll go back to that frame, and maybe I want to jump to this over here or this over here. I can continue in sections, that's totally fine, or I could do a larger jump. If I know I want to get a little bit closer to the footage here that I am tracking, I'll hit the plus sign on my keyboard, and then I'll hold down my middle mouse button and track over this way. And now I can hold down Control, click this little anchor point, and since this is a little bit larger, Nuke knows what I'm doing. And here's the thing to point out. I'll come over here this time and see. Let's try this. Let's be a little bit ambitious. You see how fuzzy those pixels are? It's because the coloration as well. So we have some sunlight in there, and that could be an issue, or maybe it won't be. We'll find out here in a minute. But I'll select my tracker. See, when I accidentally deselected it, maybe I clicked off of here, or I hit a hotkey, it deselected it in here. So to bring it back, I'm just going to click on it, my left mouse button. And to show you what's going on is my tracking kind of came this way. And at some point at frame 25, then if I click on it, frame 25, that's where this is right here. This track started, right? And then I jumped over here at frame 25, and then it continued tracking. So this is my continuous data, my continuous movement that I am getting with a jump track. So holding down Control and moving this tracking marker. Okay, so frame 46 is right over here, and I'll step forward because this looks okay. This is within the pattern area right there. It's a little bit fuzzy, so if I hold down Control and I drag this out a little bit, that might help just a tidbit. We'll find out. Let's start tracking forward frame by frame. It's looking like it is okay with that. And then I can hit play up to the point where it gets close to him and gets cut off again, okay? Which down here I will drag back. And I'll scroll up till it starts to jump off. So frame by frame. I don't think it shifted there. And there we go. Yeah, so that's okay. It started to shift on the next frame. If you see when I step forward and back, it started to shift a little bit. So I will hold down Control and jump track again. So I will hold down Control, click this anchor point or anchor marker, and I could jump here, or I can go over here. That's a new one. So I'll release that. And I'll come over here to get a little more fine movement. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll step forward up here in the tracking section, and it's looking okay. And again, this is just for demonstration purposes, so I'm gonna have to be kind of quick about this. Okay, so I have that going on, and I'll just kind of keep going like this. It's going pretty quick for me just to tap forward, and that again is just my footage that is going on here. And you're gonna see that I'm running out of fence here, so I'm gonna have to choose some other things to track as they come too. So I may only have the floor, I may have something a little bit further in, and I'll have to decide what I'm gonna do, and I'll just kind of test my tracks. So let me jump over here, and I'll just kind of zoom in, hold down Control, click and drag over here, and hopefully this foliage doesn't move at all. If the wind is blowing, it might mess up my tracking pattern right inside of this box here, the inner box. I'll step forward. Nuke likes that, so it's pretty good. Yep. Just keep stepping forward, stepping forward. I would play, but it's such quick footage that, you know, I'm not too worried about that. Now, let me see here. I'm gonna back out of here. I'll hit the minus key, and I'm gonna have to find something else. It might be something up here, and that might help me stay within the box. I could also jump to a section behind him right here if the pixels are a little more defined, and I can check that by kind of zooming in here and seeing if those are going to be a little bit more pronounced than these parts that are kind of wishy-washy because of the sunlight and the interior light and the reflections. Okay, so I could hold down Control, click on this thing, and jump over here. And I'm not afraid to try this because I can always go back to another section. I could come back to 100 if I want, and then hold down Control and move this thing around and then start tracking forward, and it will key over all the stuff that I've done. So if I choose this spot right here, for instance, I will just tap forward. And it's close. It might have gotten off a little bit. Let's see. So you can see there's some reflections that get kind of strange, right? So I do see that I have these down here, so I didn't like that strange movement that I got. So I will hold down Control, come down here, and track this. And that's probably fine, but I will hold down Control, drag this pattern box out a little bit on this side, just to include this part of the corner, and start testing it. So step forward, step forward. That's pretty good. Yeah, I am liking that. Now again, maybe I'll hit the minus key to back out and see where this thing is going and when it's going to get cut off. You can hit play and then just keep scrubbing back, but it's kind of a quick footage, so I'm going to kind of go with it. Be a little daring in life, you know? Here we go, let's see. That's pretty good. I know this next frame is going to cut off because my pattern box is going to go out of frame. So I'll jump track maybe to this guy right here, or to one of these corners until this one starts coming in a little bit more. I could jump here, back, and then back. So let's try that just to do a test. Click and drag here because I'm just curious to see what's going to go on. And maybe I'll take this corner here, and as part of my pattern box, what better pattern than this thing, right? Because it just stands right out. Now my anchor point I put on the corner there because it's going to be a little bit more pronounced. So maybe I'll tap forward. Yep, frame by frame. That's going pretty well. I also could have taken this spot, right? That spot was pretty good for the most part. And I think the next step he's going to be occluding that object. So I could jump to maybe this, see if that's going to work for me. Maybe this white boxy looking thing. I don't even know what that thing is, but it might be or make for a good pattern. Let's try it. I'll hold down Control, click and drag up here. And I'm not afraid about messing anything up because I can go back and record over it. So I'll just go ahead and step forward, step forward, step forward, step forward. That's great. And it's doing pretty well. Uh-oh, look at that. So I'm going to step back a little bit. Not too bad. I mean, that could be a little bit of a shift. I could take down here or maybe go over here. Let's see. Let's jump over here. We have an issue of perspective sometimes. And that could be that thing going through. We know we can get a clean track by finishing this one off. So let's kind of start there maybe. I'm still holding Control. I can size this up pretty well. That should be pretty good about there. So I will just kind of move forward with it, and yep, it looks pretty well. As I step forward, you'll see this thing jump. That is just a positioning because it's looking for that pattern and readjusting itself. So don't let that freak you out at all, okay? We have all the playbacks and here for the most part. You'll see that this little R right here will track forward a certain range if we set a range. All right. And then we have the other parts here that if I do need to delete anything, I can actually delete keys over here. So I can remove keyframes. I can remove or clear everything animation wise, and that's all of my tracking. I can remove everything backwards from a certain point. So if I did this, it would remove everything from 205 back this way in my timeline. And if I came over here and did this one, it's going to clear everything forward from here. So it would get rid of all this stuff on this side of wherever I currently am in the timeline. All right. So what I'll do is I will just step forward, and that's pretty good. Yeah. And it stayed on there even though the pattern box is going out of frame. I know one more step is going to start sliding. So I can choose another spot just for the moment. I'll jump over here. Maybe like that. And let's kind of hope for the best. I'm going to leave it that large. I'm not going to worry about the scale of this pattern box. And I'll just step forward. And I think that it gave me enough leadway to where I could jump to this guy right here. I'll go one more frame to be safe. It likes it. I mean, I guess we could go with it for as long as it would do it. And now that this is getting out of the sunlight and getting to be a little bit more standoffish, or, you know, standing out, I should say, we could jump to that, but I'm doing okay right here. So just kind of keep going with it at the moment. And you see those reflections are hardcore right here. They almost look like motion blur. So you might need to jump, because if it's sliding, even just the slightest bit, it's going to be shaky and jittery inside of our scene here. So I could try to jump to this. Now again, perspective, this is starting to show more of this side, so we might get some weirdness going on here. I might want to, you know, get this corner right here. So I'll hold down control, go down here, and we have that going on. I'll still hold control, and I want to get this entire thing in the pattern box and let the system try to decipher things for me. Okay, there's not much on this side or this side, so I can go tight with it. Okay, and I'll start stepping forward. I get an initial shift, and it's not really caring for that too much. So let me step back the 3 frames that I jumped over. And there's the jump. Now, since it's not liking it too much, I may need to just use these. It may be super simple. I don't know if there's anything up here I could use. There are some things down here, but they're not very clear. All right. One thing about Nuke is I can actually go up here and I can use the hotkeys RGB and A to show alpha channels or to show a certain channel. If I click R, that's my lighter channels, G, my midtones and such, and B is going to be my darker channels. And I can see if anything's going to stand out more than anything else. So that corner might be a little bit more vivid in my blue channel, right? And I can track in any of these channels to help me out. So there's R, I'll hit G on my keyboard, and then B. G almost makes this stand out really well, so I can hold down control and jump over to this one, okay? And I'll just get that in my pattern by holding down control. Kind of size it up there, right? Maybe have my pattern box a tiny bit larger. my search area. And I'll step forward. Okay. Now I'm just going to finish this off really quick, so I'll hit this until it stops. And let's see here, what do we have? Okay. Maybe I stopped it too soon. Oh, it's jumping. That's what's happening. Okay, so let's jump over here. I'll hold down control. And I'll come over here, and you'll see that I still have a few frames here. It's going to key over those frames, so I'm not too worried about that. And I'll hit play, and as it jumps off, you can scrub in here and check your footage. Now this one's sliding a little bit, but again, I'm not going to do like this perfect take at the moment just because this is an exercise. I do have this spot here. If that would show a little bit better, that's a good little crosshair for you to track. But I can just kind of keep going off of these. Now, be careful with the reflections here. If you try to track anything up here, it might slide. Because, again, the reflections are off of a different perspective, maybe way far away from this area, okay? And they might slide because of perspective as they're reflecting onto the glass. So be careful with something like that. But I'll just kind of move this over here. And again, this could be better. I'm just going to kind of start going fast now because I need to end this tutorial. So I will get some sliding. I'm gonna have to make peace with that just to kind of finish this off. Okay, and then again I'll back out of my scene a little. See that maybe I could take this. Oops. Hold down control, get those crosshairs there, right? Like that. until it gets out of frame. Then what? Well, let's step back. All right, let's move this. That is very apparent right there. Look how bright that is from the reflections and glare. Yeah. And then a jump, right? Is that a true jump though? Yes, it is. Well, shoot. Let's keep going with this. Hold down control, drag over here, step forward. It likes that. Let's see if it'll finish it off. Nope. Mad slide. So let's kind of drag back here. So fun, right? So fun. It's actually an amazing thing. It truly is. I wonder if he would like this right there. But it's, I mean, that is forward, maybe a little farther than we would like it to be. So I'll take this and let's try making this a bit larger. So I'm already getting some sliding forward. Now, if I did this frame by frame, I can do that. I can say I step forward a frame, right? And it slides, and I hold down control and reposition it. And then I do the same thing here and reposition it. I am doing jump tracks, but I'm manually doing it basically because I'm doing it frame by frame. And that could be okay. It's not a big deal. All right. But I do see some other things over here that I could try. And I would just try different points. Those reflections are killing me. Look at that. Look at that. I got a lot better, a lot easier track, and I don't remember what I did on the last one over here. So I'll just kind of keep jumping, fixing these as I go. So I'll step forward. Step forward. Forward. Not too bad, right? That's where it jumps pretty bad, so I'll just kind of go over here. Let me fix this because his briefcase is going to throw this track off pretty far. Not too bad. Bit of a movement there. And it's sliding because some of the pixels are getting blurry. A little too blurry, right? But let's see if it will just kind of go to the end with it so you guys get the basic idea. So that's the end, and that's where the track really starts sliding very badly. I see this thing here. That's maybe a spot that comes in earlier. Yeah, I could actually take this at a certain point, maybe right there. That's very unique for a tracking point. We can make that whole corner right there a type of icon and play it forward. I didn't like that at all. That's funny. So let's step backwards here. Maybe the darker part on the bottom. Yeah, let's just hold down control, don't forget that. Maybe if I do it in color. We're not having luck with that step. It's funny because I just tracked this and that worked for me, I believe. None of these points are liking me at the moment. Let's see. RGNB. Very strange. All right, well, not a big deal. There is this. It's a little bit further. Even this part's a little bit further. So, I mean, I could go back to the windowsill and just kind of make peace with moving it every 2 seconds. And I could look for other points. So I could take that. That's a good crosshair up there. Not bad. Pretty good, pretty good. Okay, so that is almost to go. We have another one right here that is kind of a standout point. It's kind of funky the way that bar comes in, so that's probably going to change colors on us real quick. But let's try it. Never know. All right. We really only need a few more frames, so. And I don't really even need to finish all this track off. Let's say that an object's going to leave the scene before I actually, you know, need all these keys. Maybe it only goes up to frame 200, then I only need to track that much. I don't need to track the whole thing. And I'm just gonna manually do this. That should really be it. I have no more frames to track. So you're gonna see that I have this continuous track here. A bit of a, almost kind of a weird jump there. Let's see what happens. And then I may not have been holding down the control key all the way right here because it looks like it jumps pretty far off. But, you know, I can go track over that, so I'm not too worried. I know that within this first some odd frames, it's going to be just fine. So I can then take my object over here, and let me just kind of hit F to frame that. I'll come down to the bottom here. And there's my tracker, right? So here's my object here, and I'll just go to select my track, come down here to the export options, and I want it to do a match move. So what match move is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to update the tracker node. So if I retract that second half of it, the match move will allow it to move onto the object here. So it will take this object and update it. Otherwise, I could do match move baked, which will set out keyframes for this. And what I'll do is just select this, and I'll drop this down, and I'll use the match move option opposed to the keyframe mode. So this is set the keys on the object, but I'll do match move, and match move in this case will update again, like I said, every time. So there's the tracker node. I have to hit create right over here to run that process, and this little green line indicates that it's still connected to the tracker node. So if I update the tracker, it pipelines it down to the transform match move, and then updates that to this character right here. Okay, so for this to be able to move around and scale it and such, I need a transform node on it. I could hit T on my keyboard or click on the transform and click this first node, which is transform, and now I can take this object, move it, and scale it. Okay, so it's not in my scene because I need a merge node, and my transform can connect directly to this transform. Okay, anything into this pipeline, it will take that PNG. So with this selected, I need A over B, right? So properties, I'll hit either the M for merge, or I can go up here to my layers and go down to merge. And there's my A property, and it's set to over, and so I'll drag the B to over the background. So there's A saying this pipeline is over this, which is the background. I'll hold down control. This gives me these little dots here to kind of help make the pipeline a little more clean. I'll select merge 2, and I'll hit 1 on my keyboard, which connects the viewer to it. And now I can kind of see my object. I'll jump to the very beginning of my scene. There's my object, and I'll hit up here, I'll hit R twice. Okay, and really all that does is set it to red, and then the second time I hit it, just makes it go to RGB, right? And I can just double click the transform node and scale this down. And then I can come here to the middle and place it. If I need to rotate it, I could. So I want it to be a little more as I was going with this. Or if you need it to be straight, you could leave it the way it was, because these are a little bit more, you know, see that? Pronounced that way. I could go like this, or I could have it follow the slant that's going on, and I could skew this, you know. So if you wanted to skew this, you could skew it and all that good stuff to make it look as though it belongs there. I'm just going to kind of put it there so it moves. That's the whole point of this, is that it moves correctly with it, and then I can get cutesy with it, if you will. And there's a lot of the tools we have. So I'm going to call that good enough for now. And at the very beginning, I might want it to come in and out, so I'll just kind of drag it off screen, drag it down, and then as I play this, there's my motion. And it's putting it into memory, so I might have some weird kind of jogging patterns going on here. I might have those little gaps there where I'm missing the keyframe, and I can go back and fill those in. It's not a big deal. I'll hit stop, and I'll jump back to the beginning, and now everything in green down here is in memory. So when I hit play, it plays back. And that's not too bad. There's some jittery in there and whatnot, and I can go back and fix it. But again, I'm not too worried about it. This tutorial is already getting too long for my liking. But that's basically what we have going on there. And this one I also did really quickly, so I'll hit 1 to show what was going on with this. And I'll jump back to the beginning of my scene, hit play. And this was a better track. And I was tracking corners when it came to it. And then my pattern goes all the way. And just to show you, I'll hit stop real quick. If I double click my match move right here, or my tracker, then you can see my pattern and where I tracked to a certain point, where it jumped and continued tracking, where it jumped and continued tracking. And it's all pretty smooth. It's all pretty nice. I don't have a lot of those little gap looking things. And the gap is really just the spread on how fast the camera jumped, or that tracking marker jumped. And that is just how fast the camera man was moving, I guess. So you'll see the more spaces there, the bigger the jump per frame, that is, okay? So a higher frame rate will also have those dots like right on top of each other, all right? That pretty much covers this section of it. So I'll hit minus to kind of get out of there, and I'll hit F to frame it. And that is pretty good. So I'm gonna end this tutorial, and the next one I do, we'll do a rotation.